Some courtroom moments are remembered forever, not because of the verdict, but because everything changes in a single heartbeat. This is a fictional documentary-style story inspired by real courtroom cases and extraordinary moments where unexpected evidence altered the course of justice. Judge Helen Morrison opened the sentencing file and looked toward Michael Carter, a 42-year-old former firefighter standing in handcuffs. His wife quietly wiped away tears while their teenage son stared at the floor. The prosecutor was ready. The courtroom was silent. Everyone believed they already knew how the story would end. Then, without warning, the courtroom doors flew open. A woman rushed inside, holding a worn leather folder against her chest. Out of breath, she shouted, "Stop! You can't sentence him!" Every head turned. Even the bailiffs froze. No one recognized her. No one except Michael. The moment he saw her, his expression changed. She looked directly into his eyes and quietly said, "I've been looking for you for 23 years. The judge slowly lowered the sentencing papers. Nobody understood what was happening. Before we go any deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Now imagine sitting inside that courtroom. Who was this woman? Why had she waited until the final seconds before sentencing to appear? What was inside the leather folder she refused to let go of? And how could 6 simple words bring an entire courtroom to a standstill? Judge Helen Morrison thought she was about to end one man's future. Instead, she was about to uncover a truth that had remained hidden for more than 23 years. The man standing before the court was Michael Carter, a 42-year-old former firefighter known as a devoted husband, loving father, and respected member of his community. Few people could believe he had been convicted of an armed robbery that ended in a fatal shooting. To most, the evidence seemed clear, and the guilty verdict appeared final. Presiding over the case was Judge Helen Morrison, a veteran judge respected for her fairness and calm judgment. She had seen countless emotional courtroom interruptions during her career, but very few had ever changed the outcome of a case. Then there was Rachel Bennett, the mysterious woman who had just rushed into the courtroom carrying a worn leather folder. She was clearly frightened, yet determined to speak. No one recognized her except Michael, whose expression changed the moment he saw her. Standing nearby was Detective Alan Pierce, the lead investigator who remained convinced Michael Carter was guilty beyond any doubt. But Rachel's sudden appearance raised questions nobody could answer. Why had she been missing for 23 years? How did she know Michael Carter? What was hidden inside the old leather folder she refused to let go of? Why had she waited until the very moment before sentencing to come forward? And what could possibly be important enough to stop a courtroom that had already reached its verdict? By the end of this story, you'll discover how one forgotten promise nearly sent the wrong man to prison forever. But before anyone could hear Rachel's story, the judge had to decide whether her unexpected arrival would change everything, or come far too late. Before anyone could understand Rachel Bennett's arrival, they had to understand Michael Carter. For 14 years, Michael served as a firefighter, risking his life to save others. He married his high school sweetheart, raised 2 children, and earned the respect of everyone who knew him. He had never been arrested and had no history of violence. Then everything changed. A local jewelry store robbery ended with the owner's death. Police found Michael's fingerprints on an abandoned truck linked to the suspects. Michael insisted his truck had been stolen weeks earlier, but investigators found little evidence to support his claim. Rachel Bennett remained an even bigger mystery. Her name had never surfaced during the investigation or trial. There were no recent records, no public trace of her life, and no explanation for where she had been for the past 23 years. Detective Alan Pierce believed the evidence against Michael was overwhelming. The witness statements, vehicle records, financial pressure, and timeline all pointed to one conclusion. The case seemed complete, but one question refused to go away. If Michael Carter was innocent, why had he never told anyone who Rachel Bennett really was? The trial seemed impossible to challenge. Prosecutors presented surveillance footage, fingerprints, financial records, and eyewitness testimony linking Michael Carter to the robbery. The media quickly declared him guilty, and public opinion followed. His family received threats, but Michael never changed his statement. "I'm innocent." After weeks of testimony, the jury found him guilty. On sentencing day, Judge Helen Morrison prepared to deliver her decision. Then Rachel Bennett walked into the courtroom, stopping everything. With permission to speak, Rachel opened the worn leather folder. Inside were old photographs, hospital records, handwritten letters, and DNA documents. She revealed that 23 years earlier, she had witnessed another violent crime involving the same criminal organization. She was placed in witness protection and forbidden from contacting anyone connected to the case, including Michael Carter. When the protection order finally ended, she immediately began searching for him. Before she could find him, she learned he had already been convicted. The courtroom fell silent as everyone realized the case was far from over. Rachel Bennett asked Judge Helen Morrison for permission to speak. Everyone expected another accusation against Michael Carter. Instead, she opened the worn leather folder. Inside were old photographs, hospital records, handwritten letters, birth certificates, and DNA documents. Rachel explained that 23 years earlier, she had witnessed another violent crime involving the same criminal organization. She was placed in witness protection and forbidden from contacting anyone connected to the case, including Michael. The protection order had only recently ended. Rachel immediately began searching for Michael, but before she could find him, she learned he had already been convicted. As Judge Helen Morrison examined the documents, the courtroom fell silent. One question suddenly overshadowed everything else. Had the justice system just sentenced the wrong man? Rachel Bennett presented the final evidence. The documents showed Michael Carter's stolen truck had been used during the robbery. New DNA testing matched another suspect already serving time for unrelated crimes. Suddenly, the case against Michael no longer seemed certain. Detective Alan Pierce realized key assumptions in the original investigation had never been challenged because the evidence appeared convincing. Judge Helen Morrison immediately suspended the sentencing and ordered a full review of the case. The courtroom fell silent. Michael's wife burst into tears, not because the nightmare was over, but because it had nearly destroyed their family. One question remained. Would this new evidence finally prove Michael's innocence? Months later, Michael Carter was officially exonerated after investigators confirmed another member of the criminal organization had committed the robbery. Rachel Bennett finally explained why Michael recognized her. 23 years earlier, Michael had rescued her from a house fire while serving as a firefighter. She never forgot the man who saved her life. Now, she had finally returned the favor. Sometimes the people whose lives we change disappear from our story, but they never forget the person who changed theirs. Michael returned to volunteer work, helping families affected by wrongful convictions. Looking back on the case, Judge Helen Morrison said, "Justice is strongest when it remains willing to question itself." If Rachel Bennett had arrived just 5 minutes later, Michael Carter might have lost the rest of his life. Sometimes, one person and one moment can change everything. The lives we touch are often remembered long after we walk away. Would you have believed Michael Carter was guilty before Rachel Bennett entered the courtroom? Tell us in the comments when you started questioning the evidence. And if you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more documentary-style stories filled with emotional twists, mystery, and unforgettable lessons.